Anyway, so I wanted to talk about 20%, okay? In the data that I've got now, we're still building crosslinks, but the way I've got it set up, the AI spools off files. I mean, it saves the stuff for me intermittently, and I can get at it while it's still processing. So anyway, it looks like about there's a bulge, okay? So we're coming up into a period of time here. This is again centered around February 26th or later. So it might be a few days after that before we start seeing some of the non-financial effects of this period. But we're going to get into this contention that will arise from all of the invaders and the NGOs and all these people being cut off from money, right? And that'll maybe it'll take 60 days on the more well-heeled ones. And those that have a big stash of cash aren't really going to sweat that part of it, but they're going to be very, very concerned because all of a sudden their income stream will be shut down, and so they know that they're being targeted, or at least are being picked up ancillarily on a target of the efficiency guys, right? So anyway, there's a lot of there's a set that is defined by 20%. So it's basically representing 20% of the subsets. So you could apply it and say, like, 20% of the financial system would do this, that sort of thing, right? We rarely get numbers, but this is reinforced not only by 20%, but 1/5 and other pointers to that fraction. So it seems fairly reliable. And this set is split. It's showing that there's about 20% of the population that will fall into this category of being on the wrong side of history at this point. We're talking about U.S. population. This is entirely U.S. centered, doesn't even go up into Canada in that regard. Then there's going to be another 20% of the population that we could think of as being really fierce, okay, that have really gotten the steam up, right? And they got a full head of pressure and the steam is coming out a little bit. So things are going to get a lot more active relative to social change. And the mass of humanity that has been pushed down by the globalists for all these years, but especially, like, say, the last 15 or 20 years where they really pushed on all the woke stuff and all of that. Okay, so that mass of the populace, about 20% of it was seriously oppressed. We were deplatformed, people came after us, we had stalkers, they took us off of this platform, then that one, they shut down our bank accounts, they did all kinds of nasties to us. That population is primarily non-vaxxed. These people are, as much as we can be in this social order, we're healthy. And so they're going to have this 20% is going to get a head of steam, right? So they're going to be powered, they're going to be pressured, and so on. So you'll see a lot of what the dwindling far left is going to call agenda politics coming out, because the 20% are going to be pushing their idea of let's return to this form of a social order. This 20% is going to show up it shows up now both as cooperating with, but also in contention with the Trump admin, right? Not the Elon Musk Doge kind of thing, right? They're not in contention with any of the actual activity. They're going to be in contention with the apparent cooperation with Israel and the Elohim worship cult. The reason that this appears to be coming out is that sometime after the 26th of February, we're going to get another, and part of that big bulge of emotional tension language that's been showing up for since at least the end of 2023. But I spoke about it in 2024. For sure. I mean, I got into it in the 2024 period, right? Anyway, so after the 26th, we're going to get this bulge that will hit us on a financial level, but it's also going to bring out this contention with all things Jewish, all things Elohim worship cult, and all things globalist. So there's going to be, it looks like, okay, so my interpretation is that there's going to be some effort on the part of the Trump administration to try and provide a level of nuance, right? To separate out the good Jews from the bad Jews, so to speak, that sort of thing. This is going to cause all kinds of problems, all kinds of contention at a social level, all the way into the society, but also up into what we can think of as the ruling cohort of our matrix here. This contention is going to spread around a lot. It's going to be kind of mixed in with a lot of the other contention. But this contention of the 20% trying to push back for not a return, but a new vision of what the human society should be. And we're not talking transhumanism or any of that kind of shit. We're not talking about AI coming and eating your liver or taking over your brain or any of this other fantasy shit that is spewed out by a lot of the fringe woo people, right? And all the LARPers and stuff. But the 20% here, the contention that's going to be caused will be visible to us all, and will all, to some extent, be forced into or pushed towards making some kind of a decision. So you'll see probably a lot of the Democrats suddenly swapping over to say, oh, we're all for the Jews, you can't say that, and all this kind of thing, right? So they'll try and do anything they can to get into a position of power to retain control, as they think. It's not going to happen. It's going to be really wonky. We're going to get into internal social disorder more than we are now, even though we're going to be entering or walking into a broader sense of social order as we correct all these problems. So from the February 26th on, the cross links are pointing to a period of maybe 60 to 80 days. So, we're reaching into spring that will have a tendency to bring up points that will be redefining our social order all through this year, and that will be coming up in a big way as we transit out of fall into winter at the end of this year. So the contention we're going to go through in this winter that leads into spring, especially relative to social identity in the sense of, who's claiming to be part of what cult, right? And so it's going to be wonky as hell, but this is going to participate with the financial stuff. And the reason it's coming up is because it's going to be the 20% of the criminals, of the populations, the criminals are going to be trying to do things to combat the 20% that are pushing really hard for a more natural and cohesive approach to things. So in this period of time, from the 26th on, is when I think Big Pharma is really good at Croak, right? Also, other things in there from the 26th of February on, I suspect that we'll start seeing some signs that people within Doge and all of these kind of guys are talking or thinking about a lot of the patents that Reggie Middleton had acquired on his distributed tech here, right? On his Veritasium network, all of that sort of stuff, right? He's really got a superior approach to things. And I think that at that point is when we start getting the officialdom looking at it. Whether they're talking to him at that time or not, I have no idea. It just seems that there's going to be an interest at that level. So big changes are coming. A lot of the stuff you'll see, both the woo-woo guys, the far extreme there, also the what we can think of as like right-wing independents, as well as fundamental radical Christians and Democrats, all going at each other, but also all supporting each other against some other aspect of the social order relative to these individual points here, relative to the individual points of contention. So the contention is really going to wrap up. It'll go from February 26th through March, April, and into May on this particular theme. I think that maybe by the first part of May, we'll start seeing some level of settling down. The dust will start settling on a lot of the financial stuff, right? The financial system is going to take a big hit. It's going to be giant because it's going to be proven that all of these companies that are out there as hedge funds and all of this sort of thing are bogus. They're just, all they are really are just money laundering fronts for the Elohim worship cult, for the Jewish organizations globally, and all of this. As they get shut down, a lot of the money returns to the system, so it's somewhat flush for a little bit, but then we start seeing how many of the assets that are claimed to underpin it all are bogus. So we're going through a really hard time, okay? In these 80 days of this contention where the 20% on the top, or, the new 20% with power is pushing back on the old 20% with power, during that period of time is when we're going to start seeing secrets revealed take a giant leap up. Maybe at the end of that time we'll get into the Smithsonian, but for sure in the beginning of that time we're going to be getting into how much of the Social Security system is bankrupt, bogus, legit, how much of the money system is bogus and or legit, and we'll see attacks on the Federal Reserve System. We'll see people within the Federal Reserve System start walking away from their job because they don't want to be shot, they don't want to be killed, they don't want to be sent to jail. And really a lot of them will prefer going to jail rather than being out in the general population because people will be so pissed about all of this. Going to be fantastically huge, the amount of stuff that's going to be coming on out, and how many, and the normies are just going to, their heads are going to explode. A lot of us will. It'll just be so staggering. You're going to have people like, UPS drivers that are just driving along and all of a sudden a particular thought will strike them and they'll just stop. I mean, it'll just be stunning to them, to regular normies, the amount of stuff that'll start coming out. So we have not even touched the secrets revealed yet. We're just getting in and opening up the doors and looking at the stuff that's spilling out at the moment. We haven't started rooting around in it at all, and that really appears to take off after the 26th of February and go in a very intense rush for the next 80 days. And so I would suspect from the way the data is saying it that maybe we're going to say maybe after the 26th somebody hits the Department of Defense, dojis go there, or maybe they go to the Federal Reserve or something, and then for the next 80 days, they're just spooling out all of the secrets within that organization. Doesn't mean that they're over or anything like that. It just means that there's just this huge tranche that'll be coming out for that 80 days. That'll take us almost all the year to absorb, integrate, and figure out what the fuck we're going to do now that we know how bad it is, right? so that's going to be the sort of the thread of the rest of this winter and into spring. It's like, oh my God, look how fucked we really are. So I don't mean to laugh, but you have to just to stay sane. Anyway, so take care, guys. Sorry this was a little long. I'm going to have to shut these down because I've got to start working on getting a setup for, I got to work on the house here, and then I've also got to figure out how I'm going to do make a soundproof chamber for doing the audiobook and stuff. Anyway, so talk to you later.